Dai Vernon, one of the greatest magicians of the 20th century. He fooled Harry Houdini. He appeared on the cover of Genii magazine, one of the most important magazines in industry, countless times. He taught Larry Jennings, Ricky Jay, Michael Emmer and David Roth. Influenced Arthur Ascanio and Juan Tamariz. If you go to any magic shop in the world, you will find his books. And if you open any book on card magic, you will probably find a mention of his name. Every magician in the world today does tricks created or popularized by Vernon, such as Ambitious Card, Cutting the Aces, Traveler's Triumph, his Chinese rings routine or his classic cups and balls routine. So what does make Vernon's work so important? As every great magician, Dai Vernon can teach us a lot, not only about tricks and secrets. His life story can tell us about the history of magic, about art and passion. My name is Alex Romanov. I'm a magician and an art historian. Today I am honored to be able to tell you the story of Dai Vernon. And of course this video is produced in partnership with The Vanishing Ink. And now make yourself comfortable and make a big round of applause for Mr. Dai Vernon. Ottawa, Canada, beginning of the 20th century. A group of boys is walking back home from school along the rail tracks. They notice playing cards lying on the ground, and one of them says, "Hey, David, you're a magician, so tell us, what is this card?" David, a boy around 10 years old, thinks for a while and then replies, "Seven of spades." The boys turn over the card, and it is indeed the seven of spades. The first trick I remember ever attempting was at the age of 2. I tried to fly, but failed. I had made some wings out of paper and was climbing a tree to do a little flying over this plot of land when I fell. I broke my arm. How did this boy do a trick with the seven of spades? David was not a psychic or a creepy boy from a Hollywood horror movie. He was just a kid with a deep interest in magic, who, after he was first surprised by a trick shown to him by his father, could never stop thinking about magic. I will tell you the secret of this trick at the end of this video, but for now, another element of this story is important. Why were there cards on the rail tracks in the first place? Those cards belonged to professional gamblers who earned money by cheating at card games. They found an unsuspecting passenger on a train and started to play. First, they used a normal shuffled deck, and after a few rounds, using misdirection, or as gamblers would say, shade, they switched the deck for a prepared one and threw the old deck out of the window. These were the cards that Vernon and his friends regularly found on the rail tracks. I think this is kind of symbolic because late in his life, Vernon would have a lot of contact with card cheats, and finding out about their techniques and methods would be one of his biggest passions. Actually, his first encounter with the gambling world happened already during his childhood. He discovered the book Expert at the Card Table, written by Erdnase. This book described techniques used by gamblers. Erdnase became the most important and favorite book of Vernon.
Erdnase. I took Erdnase from Erdnase. This S.W. Erdnase, the expert at the card table. The finest book on cards ever written, without a doubt.
This book can be quite challenging to study even for an adult, but Vernon was unstoppable. He already understood the importance of practice. His favorite class at school was geography because there they had big atlases and he could use them as a cover to practice card sleights during the lesson. He would carry this Erdnase book anywhere he went, even to a church service on a Sunday morning.
I felt very, very guilty in church to be reading how to cheat at cards,
Such dedication soon brought results. He could do a second deal, a very complicated move, at the age of 12. His parents did not really approve of his hobby. Once he did his magic act as part of a performance that school kids put together. So some kids danced and some sang, and it wasn't really good. And Vernon, on the contrary, after all his practice, did really great and got lots of applause. When he got back home, he found his mother weeping.
And I said, Mother, what's the matter? She said, oh, I was so ashamed of you. I said, Mother, what do you mean? She said, I was so ashamed of you. I said, Mother, I did very well, I'm sure. He said, yes, but she said, everybody in the audience must have thought that you were not my child. I picked you up at a circus. You were a circus child.
She couldn't even imagine how much more applause and appreciation Vernon will get later in life. If I could only do something to make a living here, I thought. They had all kinds of carnival games and everything else for entertainment. At first I thought I might like to work one of those games. I didn't really want to get into that kind of life, but I did. Coney Island, New York, a gigantic carnival. Entertainment, music, roller coasters, bright lights, games of chance, thousands of people and lots of hot dogs. There was no place for old Victorian atmosphere like in Canada. This was America, the land of dreams and deceptions. We meet Vernon again, now he's in his 20s and he works as a dart game operator. People could pay money to throw darts and win prizes, and Vernon's job was to make sure no one got really good prizes. Quite a twist in his life. His parents always wanted him to have a normal profession, an engineer or at least an artist. I guess many magicians can relate. But Vernon had other plans. His trip to New York changed his life. In fact, it even made him change his name. His family name was Werner, but New Yorkers could not pronounce it correctly.
So they couldn't say Werner. That was every place I'd go, they'd say, what's your name? And I'd tell them, and they'd say, oh, why no? And I got disgusted.
And so he changed his second name to Vernon. Vernon was fascinated by the Coney Island and wanted to stay, but he didn't really enjoy deceiving people for real. He preferred magic. Apart from magic, Vernon had many talents. He even was part of a hockey team when he lived in Canada. In New York, he picked up the art of cutting silhouettes. He quickly became good at it. In fact, so good that it would be his main source of income for many years. He even cut a silhouette of the US President Franklin Roosevelt. It allowed him to live well even during the Great Depression. When many millionaires went bankrupt and had to drive cabs, people were lining up to get a silhouette from Vernon. But even though silhouettes could bring good money to the table, for Vernon it was just a hobby. His real passion was magic, and he soon was recognized by the best magicians in the world. Once he came to a magic shop in New York owned by a guy named Clyde Powers. Clyde Powers told Vernon that he would show him a card trick, which he was sure Vernon wouldn't understand. Vernon said that he would pay $20 for any trick that he couldn't figure out. Of course, the owner was skeptical. Some 20-year-old guy claims that he knows so much about magic. But Vernon did know every trick that Powers showed him. And so at the end, Powers pointed to the back of the store and said, "We don't have our customers back there, only professional magicians. You can go back there whenever you like." And there was a small room where Harry Houdini, Harry Keller or Nate Leipzig could hang out. These were all superstar magicians. So Vernon could learn from the best. But instead of just copying them, he was constantly improving, innovating and looking for new ways to perform magic. Of course, some people just want to know. They think magic is a challenge to their intelligence. If they can't discern the fraudulent methods, the secret that's employed, they feel they're not as bright as they should be. I think the cleverer the person, the more they realize it's just an illusion you're creating. Throughout his life, Vernon fooled hundreds of magicians, among them some famous people such as Howard Thurston or Houdini. But of course the most famous case was Vernon fooling Harry Houdini, legendary escape artist, magician and a movie star. Here is how it happened. Harry Houdini used to claim that no one could fool him with the same trick more than 3 times. In 1919 in Chicago, Vernon, who was then 25, met Harry Houdini and asked him to pick a card. He put it onto the top card of the deck, snapped his fingers, slowly turned over the top card, and it was the card that Houdini picked. Houdini asked to repeat the trick. Vernon did it again, and Houdini said, "Vernon, You use a duplicate card. So Vernon asked Harry to sign the card, and he did the trick again. Houdini asked to repeat the trick. Vernon did it again. He did it 7 times. Houdini did not admit that he was fooled. That was something that Houdini would never do. But later, Houdini's wife Bess sent Vernon a letter in which she said that Houdini couldn't sleep the whole night and kept thinking about this trick. So Houdini definitely was fooled by Vernon. There is more to say about Vernon and Houdini. Vernon did not really like Houdini. If you take and put together everything that Vernon had ever said about Houdini, you can get a nice verse for a rap battle. Houdini was not, by any stretch of the imagination, a good magician. He once billed himself as the king of cards, but couldn't even shuffle a pack without bending or breaking them. Today a lot of people say Houdini died with his secrets. This is nonsense. Houdini didn't have any real secrets. What Houdini did was fraudulent entertainment, and anyone can do the same with the right advertisement. It seems like Houdini embodied everything that Vernon did not like in people. For example, Houdini hated to be fooled. Vernon, on the other hand, loved to be fooled. I like to enjoy the tricks. If you worry about the pigments in the paint, how the canvas was prepared, you can't enjoy the picture. I've been delightfully fooled, and I love being fooled. And besides, Houdini, as seen by Vernon, was not respectful to other magicians, had bad temper, and went after publicity at any cost. And yet Vernon owed some of his success to Houdini. First, a fun fact. Vernon and Houdini were kind of related. Vernon's son Edward's godmother was Houdini's wife Bess. In 20s and 30s, Vernon used the phrase "he fooled Houdini" in his advertisement. And later he would say this trick fooled Houdini about many different tricks because he realized it made spectators really interested and they were more impressed.
Every night they'd ask me, what trick did you fool Houdini with? Now I'd show them a trick I fooled Houdini with. I'd go to the next table, what trick did you fool Houdini with? Now I'd do the copper and silver coin. They'd say, boy, I can see how that fooled Houdini. Then I'd go to the next trick, I'd do a knot trick. The old simple knot trick, not this one. And oh, I can see how that fooled Houdini. Every place, the one that fooled Houdini was the greatest trick.
Yeah.
And I thought, why is it? Well, naturally, people flatter themselves. If it fooled Houdini, it's naturally going to fool me, great Houdini,
So it's like by fooling Houdini, Vernon took part of his power. A sculptor once told me, the better you get at a subject, the more your audience is limited. You can get so advanced that there is no audience in the world for you. I can see that. You could get to a point where you are ahead of everybody. There is nobody left to appreciate all the nuances. Most magicians of the 19th century tried to present themselves as aristocrats. They wanted to become a part of the upper class. They bragged that they had performed for kings and queens and millionaires. Vernon did perform for kings and queens and millionaires. But he was much more excited about meeting completely different kind of people. Gamblers, cheats, and other strange characters from the underworld. Watching the hustlers, he saw how good they were. How utterly natural their movements looked, and he wanted to learn from them.
Gambling is the classical, like classical music and rock and roll, or classical music and bad ragtime. I mean, it's a classic. Gambling is so much better. There's more psychology and thought and the execution and how to handle it. And the finest, they work out things. You've got to be practical.
What's the acid test?
They work under scrutiny, under close scrutiny, and for money. When money is involved,
mistakes are more important.
They can't. You can't wave your arms around or do funny things. They got to be done under natural card playing.
Vernon was chasing gamblers for many years. These stories could compose a nice road movie. They are full of mysterious characters such as Mexican Joe or Sneaky Dave and strange coincidences. Here is the most famous story of all. In the late 20s, Vernon got a mail from his Chicago friend John Sprong, also a card enthusiast. There is a rumor, it said, that out west somewhere there's a man who can deal from the middle of the pack. If you ever get out west and can trace down this gambler, I'm willing to pay $100 for any information at all. But why was the Santa deal such a big deal? Mostly because it seemed too complicated even to think of. How can you pretend to deal a card from the top and at the same time pull a card from the center and do it invisibly? This was such an impossible idea that, of course, as soon as Vernon heard of it, he instantly went on a quest to find this mysterious Santa dealer. We have to keep in mind that back then you couldn't just find a person on Facebook and message them. What you could do was just ask different people, which Vernon did. Finally, he found a trace. Someone told him that the man's name was Kennedy, and he lived in a small town called Pleasant Hill, outside of Kansas City. Vernon went to Pleasant Hill and started asking about Kennedy in the streets, at gas stations, in banks, but no luck. He almost gave up. He was sitting in a car ready to leave the town when he noticed a little girl with an ice cream cone. He gave her a coin to buy a new ice cream cone and asked if she knew Mr. Kennedy. And surprisingly, she did.
And I said, "Do you know a Mr. Kennedy in town?" And she said, "Mr. Kennedy lives in that white house at the top of the hill." And I thought, I'm not a Bible student, but I thought a little child shall lead them. I thought, here, I've been looking all around, Charlie Miller and I, and banks and filling stations, and here's a little child. Oh, she can't be right.
So Vernon found this guy, Alan Kennedy, a farmer who formerly had been a thief and a card gambler. Probably no other magician would be able to talk to Kennedy because gamblers don't just show their secrets to everybody. But Vernon knew so much about cards that he could pretend to be one of them. He could show that he belonged without saying that he was a magician. And so Alan Kennedy taught Vernon this legendary, mysterious Santa deal. I absolutely love magic as a hobby, but have never enjoyed plotting a show. I would much rather sit by and let someone else get the plaudits, but I would like to feel that I'd helped them. I would like to see something which I had told them bring the results. In 1942, at the age of 50, Vernon took his first regular job in construction. But it didn't last long. Very soon he fell into the river and was seriously injured. He had broken his both arms and cracked 6 ribs. When he woke up at the hospital, an intern came in and asked him to sign a paper giving them permission to amputate his arm. Vernon did not sign, and luckily he recovered. And probably realized that normal jobs were not for him. It just looks like it was his destiny to do magic. And even though he never tried too hard to make money with it because he had his silhouette business, he still was a very successful commercial performer. He was the first one to do close-up table hopping in New York. He also had a beautiful Harlequin act that he performed to Tchaikovsky's Sleeping Beauty Waltz in Rockefeller Center and in Radio City Music Hall in New York. He entertained American troops in Philippines during the World War II, and his ambitious card routine became the most popular and talked about trick in many towns. He performed on cruise ships, at exclusive private parties, and also for the Queen of Sweden, Princess of Greece, and on the same stage with Charlie Chaplin. But we mostly know Vernon as a teacher of magic, and for a good reason. He knew so much about magic that people just wanted to learn from him. During the Great Depression, he published his first small book under the title The $20 Manuscript, and the price was exactly $20. And it was big money at the time, especially during the Great Depression. Within a week, $700 worth of manuscripts were sold. Vernon made the idea of a magic lecture, something that we enjoy today so much, really popular. The whole lecture business started to grow due to the impressive success of Vernon's first lectures for magicians. In 1963, he was invited to move to Hollywood and became a resident magician of the Magic Castle, the most exclusive magic club and theater in the world. Throughout his life, Vernon traveled a lot and met hundreds of amateur and professional magicians. He was always ready to teach and provide guidance without asking for anything in return. No surprise that the title Professor, which one of his friends came up with, stuck with Vernon, and all his students would call him Professor until the end of his life. And here is some pop culture trivia. The character of the Professor, played by Hal Holbrook from the movie Shade, was based on Dai Vernon. You can even notice a remake of his famous photographs in the background in one of the scenes. And the main character of the movie is called Vernon, as a tribute to the legendary magician. As Leonardo da Vinci used to say, and I'm quite fond of quoting, "Details make for perfection. Perfection is no detail." In everything Vernon did, there was the Vernon touch. The Vernon touch is a concept which embodies the theory and the philosophy behind Vernon's magic. It is a way of thinking about methods and effects. Vernon touch is about two things: using your head and being natural. Even before you start practicing, you have to think, and think a lot. Think about the effect, about all the different slides that you could use, about misdirection, about the structure, and so on and so forth. And then you have to practice in order to be able to execute all these moves in a perfectly natural way. Natural is maybe one of the most important words in Vernon's vocabulary.
Or I could do this and pick the pack up. But it's very natural to put the coin here to pick the pack up. A natural way to put a ring on it would be to put it on like that. I didn't want to go, it's unnatural to reach under there. He says it's natural enough, he says, to take with the thumb, but it's certainly not natural to do that.
Being natural. What an easy and at the same time an incredibly difficult concept. It is not just about the slides. It is about self-reflection. It is about being independent and original. It is about not trying to be Cardini, Slidini, Vernon, Blaine or Shin Lim. It is about being yourself. Vernon always knew who he was. He was obsessed with magic. His wife once said, "Magicians are crazy. You know there's something wrong when you're on your honeymoon and you walk into the bathroom and your husband is standing on the commode holding a deck of cards and looking at his hand in the mirror." He could practice day and night. He knew it and he loved it. He accepted this mania as part of his nature and was happy with it. I've always tried to live in the present moment and enjoy what was going on and the wonderful people I was spending my time with. Being content and happy in this very moment of life, now that's the trick. Remember the cards on the rail tracks? Vernon saw these cards regularly and he came up with the idea to mark these cards. So he picked up one card and ripped off a corner, and then he put some dirt on another card, and of course he remembered the values of the cards so that he could identify them later, and he would leave these cards on the ground. He always waited until his friends happened to ask him about these cards. So if they said, "Hey Vernon, you're a magician, here are some cards, tell us what this card is." Well, he had just to look at the backs of the cards, notice the marks which he left, and then tell them, this is 7 of spades or 3 of hearts. For his friends, it was just pure magic because they had no idea that it was a well-prepared and planned illusion. But for Vernon, it was simply using his head and being natural. Just the Vernon touch. Thank you for watching. This was the longest episode on this channel so far. There was just no way to make it shorter. Do you perform any effects by Vernon? Has his philosophy influenced your magic? Share your thoughts in the comments. And of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your magician friends. It would be impossible to tell everything about Vernon even in a 3 hours video. So if you want to find out more, look in the description to this video. I listed some sources which you can use to learn more about the professor. My name is Alex Romanov. This was Art of Impossible. I'll see you next time.